Texas desperado no longer exists, the newspapers noted. John Wesley Hardin, a gunslinger forged in post-Civil War violence, fell at the Acme Saloon in El Paso when Officer John Selman fired. It was August 19, 1895. The outcome crowned years of escapes, trial, and prison. The obituary sealed a cycle of crime and the decline of the Old West. Recorded in 1907 in the Bolivian Andes, the image is considered the last known photograph of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Cassidy is seen mounted on a mule. Beside him, Sundance adjusts the tack on his own animal. The record belongs to the pair's final phase, when, on the run, they were already being watched by local authorities and informants. In 1907, Emerson Hough portrayed him in The Story of the Outlaw. John Simpson Chisholm, a cattle rancher since 1854, joined between 1866 and 1867 in partnership with Charles Goodnight and Oliver Loving, driving herds to New Mexico territory. Years later, his ranch sheltered Billy the Kid and the Regulators during the Lincoln County War in 1878. Apache Kid, a native from the San Carlos Reservation, served as a guide for the U.S. Army in Arizona. In 1887, after a mutiny and gunfight, he was tried and convicted. He escaped during transfer. He became hunted by posses and rangers operating between Arizona and Sonora until he vanished. Reports point to his capture or death in the early 20th century. John W. Poe from Kentucky migrated to Texas in the 1870s, worked as a buffalo hunter, and later as a lawman. In 1881, at 31, the Canadian River Cattle Association hired him as a detective to pursue Billy the Kid and his gang. On July 14th, he accompanied Pat Garrett to Fort Sumner, New Mexico, in the operation that led to the outlaw's death. William Clark Quantrill, a former teacher turned Confederate guerrilla leader, commanded Quantrill's raiders along the Missouri-Kansas border. He carried out ambushes and raids on Union detachments and towns. He promoted nighttime incursions and looting. He died, wounded and captured in May 1865. His tactics shaped Frank and Jesse James as outlaws. Who was the most notorious lawman of New Mexico? Many cite Pat Garrett. Among Hispanics, El Fuego Baca stands out. Garrett gained fame for killing Billy the Kid in 1881 in a darkened room. Baca, in 1884, faced about 80 white cowboys, withstood nearly 4,000 shots and dynamite. After the siege, violence ceased in Socorro. Ezra Allen Minor, known as Bill Minor, served time in the U.S. for horse theft and stagecoach robbery. Released in 1880, he returned to crime and earned the nickname Gray Fox. In 1904, in Canada, he carried out what is considered the first successful train robbery. Oral tradition attributes to him the order, "Hands up," today widespread in the lore of the West. Badman, or Billy, Brooks served as a deputy in Newton, Kansas, and later in Dodge City. Involved in disputed shootings, he abandoned the role. In 1874, he began driving stagecoaches for the Southwestern Stage Company. After losing the mail contract, he joined a scheme to rob rival shipments. Arrested, he was taken from his cell and lynched by a mob on July 29th. Tom Blackjack Ketchum, outlaw of the West, appeared after capture with his right arm amputated from wounds suffered while trying to rob a Colorado and Southern train. Detained in 1899, he was tried in New Mexico territory and, on April 26, 1901, hanged. The case marked the tightening of railroad protection laws in the U.S. Southwest. Minor in California. Between 1848 and 1855, the gold rush attracted migrants from America, Europe, and Asia and boosted the portrait market. Studios recorded in daguerreotype and ambrotype men with pans and pickaxes to prove their trade, send to family, or advertise themselves. Today, these images are central to the iconography of the Old West. Probable mistake. The famous photo attributed to Josie, wife of Wyatt Earp, does not depict her. Although used by Glenn Boyer on the cover of I Married Wyatt Earp, 1976, and advertised in 1880, documentary evidence indicates it is a 1914 photogravure registered as Coloma, a sign of commercial reuse and late recoding of the image. Dan Thrapp consolidated in 1964 the legacy of Al Sieber in the biography Al Sieber, Chief of Scouts. Sieber, a German and Union Civil War veteran, commanded George Crook's Scouts in Arizona during the campaigns of the 1870s-80s against the Chiricahua. In 1887, wounded in a San Carlos gunfight linked to Apache Kid, he effectively ended his career. It is not who many suppose. The inscription Mangas, Chief of the Warm Spring Apaches, led to confusion with Mangus Coloradus, a Chiricahua leader of the U.S. Southwest in the 19th century. The subject is his namesake son, photographed by A. Frank Randall in 1886. The Smithsonian preserves an albumen copy from the collection of General Nelson A. Miles. In 1821, merchant William Becknell inaugurated the Santa Fe Trail, the first international route linking New Mexico, then a Mexican province, to the western frontier of the United States. For decades, merchants, soldiers, settlers, and caravans shaped Santa Fe. With the railroad in the 1880s, the route lost relevance and fell into disuse. Known as the Massacre Cowboys, the photograph, dated around 1885, is a cabinet card produced by Charles S. Baker and Eli Johnston in Douglas, then Arizona Territory. It portrays cowboys employed by Texas John Slaughter at the San Bernardino Ranch near present-day Douglas, working cattle along the U.S.-Mexico border. John Burwell Omohundro Jr., Texas Jack, gained fame on the Chisholm Trail drives. On stage, he showed ties with Wild Bill Hickok and Buffalo Bill Cody, pioneer of the Western show. In 1877, he created the troupe Texas Jack Combination. He died of pneumonia in Leadville, Colorado, a month before turning 34. In 1908, Cody commissioned a tombstone with the wrong age, 39. Portrayed around 1865, Tiburcio Vasquez consolidated his reputation as one of the most famous Hispano-Californian bandits. Between 1850 and 1874, he commanded stagecoach robberies, thefts, and cattle rustling. In 1874, shot and wounded by reporter George Beers, he was arrested. Taken to trial, he was hanged in 1875 in San Jose, California, in the northern part of the state. A cabinet card from 1875 portrays Ben Thompson, notorious gunman and chief of police of Austin, in a half-length pose, formal attire against a neutral background. Printed and mounted on stiff card, the image follows the commercial standard of the time, intended for sale and circulation in family albums. Studio-produced, it is typical of 19th century photography. A cabinet card from the 1880s titled "The Real Cowboy Captured Alive" portrays on the left Cottonwood Charlie Nebo alongside Nicholas Janis, a French-American settler in Nebraska Territory. Sources link him to Joseph Antoine, interpreter at Fort Laramie, as a descendant, or perhaps brother, in what was then Wyoming Territory. Peter Bogardus, heir to a famous lineage of marksmen, carried a Remington 1888 and kept another at his belt. Trained under his father, Captain Bogardus, he performed with his brothers Eugene, Edward, and Henry in the shooting acts of Buffalo Bill's Wild West, a traveling show that popularized shooting culture at the end of the 19th century. From 1835 to 1885, the frontier became business. Former Texas Rangers, the 49ers, accepted contracts from Mexican state governments to hunt Apache and Comanche groups. Paid by private companies, they advanced from ranch to ranch. The proof of the work? Human scalps, receipts that sustained a market, all supported by official payments. In the photo, around 1850, a bullwhacker of the fund raises the whip that guided oxen pulling heavy wagons. This trade, practiced by men and also by some women, kept convoys moving and sustained commerce before the arrival of the rails. Paradox. A key piece of the route, he lived at the lowest rung of the social scale. A carte de visite from 1878, with the portrait of Charles Baudry alongside his wife Manuela, survived stained with blood. It was taken from Baudry's body after the shootout at Stinking Springs, New Mexico, on December 23, 1880, when Lincoln County Sheriff Pat Garrett killed him, and in the same strike captured Billy the Kid. In 1887, Cherokee leader Ned Christie became a target after being accused, without evidence, of killing federal deputy Dan Maples. Years of pursuit followed in Indian Territory with sieges and escapes. In 1892, a posse blew up his refuge and executed him. Afterwards, lawmen tied his body to a door and posed for photos, displaying it as a trophy.